My name is Philippa Cox, and I've had the privilege of being a midwife since 2003. That's 20 years now. I've had the opportunity to work in a big tertiary hospital in Abu Dhabi and then in a refugee camp in Ethiopia, in Yemen, and in northern Pakistan, all over Australia, in rural and remote Australia, in the outback of Australia and Aboriginal communities up in the Torres Strait. So I've actually had the most incredible, rich experience as a midwife that has actually really given me the most amazing knowledge and the amazing set of skills to be able to know a really huge range of normal in pregnancy and in childbirth. That is actually quite unusual in mainstream maternity care, particularly here in Australia. So, one of the things that I've noticed is that the modern world actually impedes our childbirth experience. Now, what do I mean by that? We'll be actually unpacking that over the next hour. Here we go. So, what I'd love to introduce to you today is my webinar. And I had a difficulty in giving it a title because I'm going to be talking about 3 ways to prepare for a safe birth in Western society. And doctors don't really tell us about it. Now, the reason why doctors don't really tell us about these things is A, they're really, really busy and they only give us about 15 to 20 minutes, if we're lucky, half an hour. So they're actually basically looking at our clinical situation.
A lot of women would actually be quite puzzled because they're probably coming into birthing experience with a lot of fear, so they're not realising it can be a very spiritual experience and quite a empowering experience.
I totally agree with you. And that's what I'm finding, isn't it? It's massive. And it's actually that disassociation from exactly what you're talking about, that it can be an empowering experience, is something that I'm finding is getting more distant and more distant and more distant, even since you retired, Liz.
Sorry, what was that bit?
Sorry, even since you retired, women are getting more distant and more distant from their bodies, from the fact that it can be an empowering experience.
Yes. And it's been in a lot of mainstream, that has been an evolution over time.
Yeah.
It's only when women have decided not to go with mainstream as such that they've gone back into empowering themselves and realising that as women we are quite strong and that we are more than capable of birthing that baby we're carrying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's stuff that I'm going to really unravel as this discussion evolves. And I just find it really interesting how women are really scared of the pain, when the 2 words that really resonate with me from this whole quotation are profound initiation to spirituality. Because when you're looking at the whole birthing process, is that, yeah, it's painful. But there are ways to actually circumvent that as well, natural ways to circumvent that. that we'll discuss later on. And the initiation, that initiation into childbirth, into motherhood, I should say. It's interesting, isn't it, when you've got that beautiful progression of labour, and when you're in that beautiful labour land, Liz, where nothing exists except for you and your breath and what you're experiencing. And then when you get to that stage, that transition stage, before you actually start to bear down and birth your baby, it's, in midwifery circles, we call it the crisis of confidence, or the I can't do this, the oh my gosh, what am I doing? I need an epidural. Where's a cesarean section? I need it. And that is the birth into motherhood.
Mm.
It's written in so many midwifery texts and childbirth texts. Because once your baby is born, don't you agree that you're a different woman? You've changed somehow.
Oh, definitely. And that the moment you've birthed and you see that baby, you're holding that baby, you forget that part of your birthing process.
Everything. And what about those beautiful looks that women have on their face right after a baby is born? That look of, oh my God, I can't believe I've done this. This baby is mine. I made this baby. That
Yeah.
beautiful flooding of oxytocin.
Oh, it's so powerful.
Yeah, it's just incredible. So, and when you're looking at initiations in any way, shape, or form through human history, an initiation is going from one identity to another identity, like from a boy to a man, from a woman, from a girl to a woman, from like a man to a shaman, if we're looking at it from a real tribal basis, from a real
Yeah,
tribal perspective. And when you're looking at all of those changes in identity, what do they involve? That initiation, it is a challenge.
it's a big challenge.
Interesting, interesting. And this is what childbirth is. It's a birth from a single, well, from a childless woman into being a mother. It's a massive change of identity that is not only a mental change, but also the hormones running around her body also changes your way that you feel, the way that you think, the way that you are.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, isn't it? And as you've so really well pointed out at the beginning of this conversation, we have totally removed ourselves from that.
Oh, we're not, yeah, it's birth has been portrayed as something to fear, that you can't do. You need all this help, you need all this support. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, you do need support, but you need support in the way that you're encouraged to get through that, the part that you're finding difficult and you're finding really hard and you don't think you can do. And if you've got people there or support person or persons there who can just help you, talk you through it, get you over that little hurdle, uh, into that next phase. It Yeah, you realise, yeah, you can do it. You are getting there. You are going to birth this baby.
yeah, exactly. It's taking you over that hurdle.
Mm.
And I hear time and time again, and even when I was working in other hospitals, not the hospital that you and I are working at, but other hospitals that had that medical model of care, I would be in birthing rooms helping midwives, and they would get to that transitional stage where it's got that crisis of confidence. Oh my God, I can't do this. I can't do this. Oh my God, I'm too tired. All of that. And instead of women, giving them that extra support, exactly what you said, they're calling for an epidural. So by the time the anaesthetist gets there, they've already birthed their baby, or they're just in the process of birthing their baby.
Mm.
So it's really interesting, isn't it? It's like, no, we can't do it. It's something to fear. And it's something that's hard. So we've got to protect ourselves from something that's hard. And my question is, why? When it is such an empowering, incredible experience. You know, Liz, when I was starting out on this business, I actually did a rough calculation of how many babies I've actually helped bring into this world. And it's over 3,000.
That's pretty impressive.
Isn't that huge? And
It is.
they're the babies that I've actually had my hands on, let alone the women that I've actually been a second midwife for. So you could probably double that or even triple that, particularly
Mm.
in places like Abu Dhabi when we had 12,000 births a year. And I was just witnessing and witnessing and witnessing like 10, 12, 14, 16 births in a shift for 3 years. I mean, that's huge. Do the math on that. That's massive. So I've actually borne witness to a lot. And when it comes to pregnancy complications and birth complications, there is nothing, 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 Liz, that I have not witnessed. And
I
many of
can
them
believe it.
I've managed.
Mm.
And I've been so lucky to have that broad range of normal that a lot of professionals, birth attendants in Australia, would not have been able to witness. So I've been really privileged to witness all that. So it's pretty amazing. So I have seen that look on women's faces after they've given birth so often. It's just beautiful. It's
Oh,
absolutely beautiful. And it also goes with a woman's self-belief within herself and how she can actually set herself up for the rest of her life and her family. So I just want to introduce you, after that lovely conversation, to a couple of facts. Now, I know statistics are like bikinis. They reveal a lot, but they can hide some hidden information. But I found these statistics really quite alarming, actually. And these are from the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare. So the caesarean section rates is increased from 32 to 38%. The rate of induction for first-time mums has almost doubled in 20 years. And most of that has actually been in the last 10 years. And since a couple of years ago, there was an implementation of a policy where they are encouraging inductions at 39 weeks for people with one risk factor. And this has become a governmental policy. And so you can expect that rate of almost half first-time mums to dramatically increase as well in the next few years. So the next analysis of data, of statistics, that number, I guarantee, will be well over 50% of first-time mums being induced. So why? Why? Well, research suggests that people are having babies older, and also there's a decrease in health. So there's a lot more gestational diabetes than there ever was. Like, do you remember, Liz, like 20 odd years ago when we were practicing as midwives? I know from my experience, I don't know about yours, but I would only test for gestational diabetes for women who were at risk of gestational diabetes.
oh, definitely. Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Family history, previous history.
overweight,
Yeah.
polycystic ovarian
We weren't
syndrome.
doing it across the board.
No, whereas now we're doing it across the board and we're picking up a lot more. And gestational diabetes can actually have generational effects as well, from not only from the mother, but through the baby and from their babies and their babies' babies. So it can actually have a generational effect. And it's alarming. That actually is really alarming. And I know recently, about 5 years ago, they changed the goalposts. Remember when they changed the goalposts to the diagnosis of gestational diabetes in Australia, where it went from 8 to 7.8?
Oh, yes, yeah.
So it actually captured a lot more in that bell curve
Yeah.
as well. So that probably had another reason for why the numbers have gone up as well. And polycystic ovarian syndrome has gone up dramatically as well. Thyroid problems have gone up. Like all these little health problems for women have just increased, and that impacts their pregnancies and impacts their births.
It does.
Yeah. And then you've got depression and anxiety, which is just going through the roof. And there's a statistic here that 1 in 5 women are experiencing depression, either antenatally or postnatally or both. And that is grossly, grossly, grossly underreported.
Oh, yes.
You talk to any pregnant women. I mean, how many pregnant women, when you were practicing, had depression or anxiety in their, even antenatally? I reckon, so many women in my caseload when I was working up north had suffered from anxiety when they were pregnant. And it was one of the chief counselling ways that we would actually counsel women through their births, through their pregnancies, I should say. It was huge, and that translates to depression when their baby is born, and also birth trauma. That's gone through the roof as well, and that could be because the rate of intervention has increased, hasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And so once you induce, you open up the cascade for intervention. And that's where women's choice has been taken away and their autonomy has been taken away. And just they end up feeling traumatized. And that has massive, massive implications on depression, on attachment to their babies, on their cohesiveness as a family, as a cohesiveness to their husbands. And eventually it ripples out to society. So this is actually a really huge problem.
But that also becomes generational as well.
Totally.
Yeah. And that's
Absolutely.
what people aren't understanding, that there's a lot of these things, as I said, become generational, and people aren't understanding why they're
Yeah,
getting, these little, things keep cropping up or are happening. And there's such a flow-on effect from so many different things that we hopefully somewhere the wheel turn again and we'll come back to realising we don't need to sort of do that 39-week induction. I mean,
I
that,
know.
how many women, how many women are ready to actually, hormonally to birth at 39 weeks?
Absolutely.
They're not, a lot aren't ready for maybe till nearly 41 weeks, which is still within the normal.
Absolutely. And the thing is that the normal is getting narrowed down. And there is actually scientific evidence to say that Nagel's rule, which is what we calculate our due date on, is actually wrong. There is scientific evidence to suggest that. They're saying that the due date per se, because we know due date that it's a myth anyway, it's over a 4 or 5 week period between 37 and 42 weeks. But the actual due date itself should be more like 40 plus 6.
Yeah.
And that goes really, really well with first time mums actually birthing around 41 weeks.
Oh, yes.
Oh, isn't that interesting that our bodies
Mm.
know what to do? Our
But,
bodies know what to do.
but again, women, a lot of women don't know how to listen to their body
No,
on any
exactly.
level.
And it's getting worse when we are so out there, particularly focused on social media and these phones that we carry around. And it's one of the chief pillars that I'm actually focusing my pregnancy coaching business on is developing that self-awareness.
Yeah.
And that's through breathing, meditation, and qigong and yoga and all that inner work. Because if we listen to our bodies, particularly with the qigong really, really heightens your intuition. Your intuition is heightened anyway through pregnancy. And qigong actually amplifies that. So when
What,
women actually learn to trust themselves and get fully aware, they can learn to listen to their bodies.
yeah, doing something like yoga and qigong, what it takes them out of that headspace into being grounded,
Yeah, it
which
does.
a lot of them have got, don't get grounded often enough.
Yeah.
So that in itself is a bit, that can be quite confronting till you realise that you feel a lot better for being grounded.
Yeah. And particularly when you're pregnant, when your hormones are amplified anyway.
Having a party.
Oh, what are we
Oh,
doing?
am I raging today, or am I just going to have a quiet evening, or what am I going to do? And yeah, some women hormonally are everywhere.
I know they don't. You don't know if you're Arthur or Martha. You really don't. Or Fred, yeah, or Wilma, or whatever. And it's really interesting. And I know from a personal experience through qigong, like I told you, Liz, I know you've loved qigong for ages, and I've only gotten into qigong in the last 3 years, and I got into qigong through a very difficult time in my life, and it really, really, really changed my life. It really brought me inside, and it really heightened my own self-awareness. And being a midwife and knowing how, just experiencing thousands and thousands and thousands of women going through pregnancy and childbirth and entering into motherhood, the first thing I actually thought of is, oh my gosh, women would benefit so much from a practice like this.
Yeah, yeah,
They really
particularly,
would.
as you say, particularly in this day and age where you've got so much social media in your face all the time, and you forget about you forget about your own self-awareness, about being grounded, um, and that you don't have to meet all those false social expectations.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when you look at your career as a midwife, and I remember, there are many, many women that I've looked after in pregnancy and childbirth who are really into centering themselves and do have that self-awareness. And a lot of that did come from yoga because yoga, is really, really popular. And all that meditation techniques, and they went into hypnobirthing and calm birthing and all those techniques. And did you find when they go through labor and they're centered, they can just screen out any adverse things that happen, and they just open up their body and their body just flows into labor.
Mm. Yeah, And even with a labour that doesn't go to plan A and has to suddenly go to plan B, they still have a lot calmer approach. They're not feeling like they've um, failed in any way. They realise they've done the best they could on that day. That baby has got other ideas, and yeah, unfortunately, plan B is what we have to resort to.
Absolutely. And we are so lucky that we live in a country that we have a plan B available like that.
Oh, so blessed. So blessed.
Aren't we so lucky? Because in places where I worked overseas, we did
Mm.
not have that option. So I had to try every single contortion or trick up my sleeve. I've got a toolbox that's about the size of a Pantechnicon, really, like an 18 wheeler, because I had to develop these skill sets within my toolbox to be able to help women birth babies. And it's incredible how much I learned from women in developing countries. It's incredible. It's like, wow, that's really cool. It was awesome. And that is the thing, is that they are centered. They know that they did their best. They know, women know that it's okay. And they know that, yes, I am so lucky that I was able to go for a cesarean section at 3 o'clock in the morning. And they have a beautiful, lovely baby at the end of
Mm.
it, you know? And I think it's from lack of preparation and lack of self-awareness. It'd be interesting to discuss this with you, actually, that where women end up having that birth trauma and that sense of failure. Oh my gosh, I failed in childbirth. I mean, how can you fail in childbirth, really?
Mm.
I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Liz?
I think one of the things I used to encourage women to do is try to come into childbirth having done preparation, maybe not always quite what as midwives we would have liked to see, but they had to take some ownership here. But also to come into come into their birth, into their labour, having had rest, being hydrated, having eaten, just the basic, um, and realising that babies labour's not, the majority of women, I'll reword that, the majority of women, labour's not going to be 5 minutes. It's going to be X number of hours. Now, and
Yeah,
that's going to differ for everyone, and there's a lot of factors that contribute to it. And
yeah,
so, yeah, trying to prepare women for birth, and coming into their labour, their birth experience in the best possible way they can.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And this is what we're going to be touching on soon.